All right, everyone. It is time. We did the Grimdark Future tier list a little while ago, and been looking to make the Age of Fantasy tier list, but for this one, I think I needed some help, and we've got Sam over at Any War Game Anytime, man. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, yeah,
Been
yeah.
looking forward to this. We tried to record this last week, and the hurricane put our internet out as we were mid as we were preparing to start. So
Well,
we're finally getting it done now.
and you have, I don't think I can really talk about Age of Fantasy without having you because we've basically I think 90% of my Age of Fantasy games, both the regiments and non-regiments, have been played with you. And so not only we've played a lot of games.
We
One of
have, and we've both played a lot of armies too
Yeah,
at
because we
this
have my
point.
Mage Knight, we have our own armies, and then we have my Mage Knight figures that we would play games. Well, we've literally would just picked. We've played most of the armies, Sam, and got a really good idea about what we think is good, what we think is bad. Um, Now, Sam, real quick, I think some people sometimes get some of these tier lists the wrong idea. So we are doing this from a competitive level. So I
Yeah,
want
so
to say,
this isn't like our opinion on the army in terms of their flavor or in terms of
yeah,
their lore or anything like that. This is like a an attempt to have kind of a as much as we can like a kind of an irrational basis for like competitive play. Where do these fall?
exactly, exactly. I would say that OPR Age of Fantasy, and to be specific, we are talking about the Blob Age. We're not talking about regiments. Regiments is sort of that would really change a lot in this tier list. We're talking about just good old fashioned
Yeah, we may do
blobs.
that one later, but
Yeah, yeah. The other thing is that I would say this Age of Fantasy is a relatively balanced. It's better than Grimdark Future. There is some design consistencies there, but I do think that even with that the case, there are some things going on. Some of the things we also have to consider is that we always have to consider the army list building restrictions. So there's going to be some armies that on paper seem okay, but due to the army list restrictions, it sort of makes them bad. Like some of the that's just like when I mean army list restrictions, Sam, I mean restrictions on the number of a single unit that you can run and on the max number of units you can run in an army. So we'll get into that further. Okay, Sam, anything before we get started here that you sort of want to preface this with?
no, I think let's dive into it.
All right, cool. So let's start off with Beastman. So Beastman, Sam, I'm going to show a few for a few of these. I'm going to show a unit that sort of sticks out to us. One, I think probably one of their better units is their Centaurs.
Yeah, centaurs definitely are one of the units with real potential in the list.
Mhm.
The crazed is nice, furious,
The caster on
and
them as well.
the ability, yeah, the caster upgrade is super strong.
Yeah.
Uh, that lets you just kind of either funnel extra dice, to your regular casters, or just build up, cast some of the low level spells. It's a pretty good ability. Unfortunately, kind of, I think the centaurs is kind of the highlight of the beastmen list, and they really struggle, which is sad because I love them, but
Yeah, they don't have a great thing is like they're okay. They're not
they're
terrible,
low
but they're not
quality though, like
they're
that, which
they're lower
really hurts them.
quality. They don't have a lot. Even centaurs are four.
Hmm.
Their spell list, like they have a level one stealth, which is not
It's
that
bad.
great. Yeah. Um,
It's real bad.
they're
Most
level
of their
twos and
spell, like they've got the movement spell at level 2.
and they got the -2. That's sort of their best one. You sort of what you need to do is you
Mhm.
double stack centaurs and you maybe run them in and cast that. But I would say this: we're going to put them at sort of a C tier. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, they
Sort of.
don't
They're
have a
not
lot of
terrible.
options.
Yeah, they're
No, they're
not
not.
terrible.
They're fine army, but they don't have a lot of options. They're pretty much all low quality. They have very few high quality units, and the high quality units that they have are not super great. Uh,
They're
and
not they're okay. It's like everything in Beastman Army. I think it's a good C tier because everything is sort of okay. It's okay.
it's okay. It's and as this tier list goes further, we'll
Yeah,
probably
you'll
see
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 where
why
some of
we're
the you'll see some where the higher tier goes. So The next one I think is a great example to talk about Chivalrous Kingdom. So Chivalrous Kingdom, Sam, this is an A tier army. This is
Yeah,
a
yeah, for
so
sure.
this is a
They get access to uh the two best spells in the game, right? You've got protection and magic wit and the plus movement.
plus movement, and
Mhm.
especially so we brought one. They've also got some good buff. They have just what they need. They've got the this is a great. It's a very cheap thing. Grail relic, decent in hand to hand. It's got the furious buff on these guys. But the big thing we have to talk about Chivalrous Kingdoms. One, Peg Knights. Pegasus Knights are just ridiculous in this game.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Flying and fast is really good.
And
Most
with a
things in OPR that have flying do not have fast.
and
So
in an
that's kind
army
of
that can have a 6 inch move, and they also get the advanced tactics. So those peg knights can just really they can hit wherever they want to. They're just super,
yeah.
especially
So
when you tack
you've
on.
got access to like the movement ability on your characters and ability on your characters to give a unit Strider too, which is also very
Yep,
powerful for
Striders,
their
advanced
fast.
tactics.
Mhm.
They've got the +1 to hit as well. The other thing about a lot of their elite arms, one, they have great chaff. They have that peasants or great chaff, but they also a lot of their key units have fearless, so they have
Mhm.
that morale mitigation. They're a super good army. I play as one of my mains, and I'll tell you, Shivers Kingdoms are absolutely A tier. Um, Dark Elves are, I think, probably maybe a B tier or A tier. I mean,
I think Dark Elves are a B tier as well.
yeah,
They do get the movements. They get the movement spell, but their other spells are kind of. I guess they do. Yeah, they get the movement spell. They do get a +1 defense spell too, but it's.
they get rending. Now their rending is short ranged.
Mhm.
Their rending is okay. The problem is that you have to get so close with their rending that the other thing I think that really makes Dark Elves decently good is they actually get some morale debuffs. They've got I think it's an ability and a spell that gives you the minus to morale. That's pretty good. Not great chaff, and their elites like they're better than Beastmen, but like I said, they're not quite up to Shivers. They're sort of this is a good it's a good B tier army. I think a good B
Yeah,
tier.
yeah, because they've got a lot of options, but they still kind of they still have a lot of they have some higher they have more higher quality things than Beastmen do, but they still have a lot of quality for
Mm.
Def 5 stuff. They don't have a lot of both high quality and high defense stuff. And their stuff that's good is expensive. Like Snake Sisters are good, but they are expensive.
Yeah, let's look at.
Uh,
Yeah, I think Snake Sisters. We did pick out Snake Sisters. It's a pretty good one. So they have
mhm.
their shooting version. I think I like the Glaives better.
I agree. Like just
Glaives are just solid.
that's a lot of
Um,
rending attacks,
mhm.
which is
A lot
really
of rending
powerful.
and quality three. And the thing is, in Age of Fantasy, the rending isn't nearly as prevalent. Strider on these guys as well. Strider for monstrous infantry is super good.
Mhm.
So very good. That's the reason that I don't like running them with the secret bow. Just it doesn't interact very well with Strider.
Yeah, that lets you kind of put them in terrain, and if your opponent doesn't also have Strider, it means you have that kind of first strike capability, and you can kind of dictate the flow of the battle much easier.
Snake Sisters are better because they do have the Snake upgrade, the Snake Sister upgrade. She works really well in the squad as well. So yeah,
Mhm.
Snake Sisters are super good. They have some good, like I said, a good B tier army. I think you can do well with them. Deep Sea.
There's
This
an
is one of your.
argument for A tier for Dark Elves, but I will go B tier today.
Yeah. I think, and they're high B. It's funny, like
Mhm.
Dark Elves can be high. I don't know. I would say the Chivalrous Kingdoms feel more powerful than Dark Elves. I just
I agree. They'd be low A tier if they were A tier.
yeah.
Uh,
Deep Sea Elves. This is one of your fan
I
favorites,
know, I
Sam.
know. I love them so much,
Yeah.
and I really want them to be good, but they're just really not.
Yes.
They've got fun options. I've done the giant crab, the sneak attack crabs, as I call them.
Hmm.
The worm riders are pretty nice. The constrict is a very powerful rule, but they don't really their units with have it don't really take full advantage of it. Having the character that you can put constrict
Hmm.
on a unit is really nice, but it is it's their character options in general just aren't very good. Like their lord level character is still only quality 4,
Yeah, that's
which
a
which
rough one.
really
That
sucks.
is a rough one. And you're right. They're just, I mean, I think the other thing that they don't have is they don't have spears. and
They don't have spears,
that's a big deal in this game. Like
and their spells suck real bad.
spells aren't good.
They do not have good spells
They've
at
got a
all.
stealth.
Their level 3 spell being flying is so bad because most of their stuff has Strider anyway. Like flying, it's literally worthless.
Yeah,
On 90% of the cases, and it's their level 3 spell, one of their level 3 spells, and they don't get the ability to have a level 3 caster anyway.
yeah.
So it's like
It's a
so
rough one.
bad.
It really I don't quite understand. I go back to this. I always say everyone should have access to a level 3 caster.
A level 3, yeah,
Yeah,
and
but also no spears. I mean, spears are
yeah, the
almost
fact
have
the
to be a
fact
standard.
that their sea guard can't have spears is irritating because literally the high elf which we will talk about high elf later, the high elf sea guard have spears, although you can only take them in 5 man in high elves, but still
Ten man blocks it, but I mean, yeah, we'll get into high.
and they're throwing weapons like they don't even get
Yeah,
long range shooting like it's just so bad.
yeah,
It's so bad.
it is. Duchies. I think we can talk about our first S tier. We agreed on that,
Yeah,
Sam?
yes, I think there's going to be very few S tier armies in this list, and duchies is one of them because duchies is just broken. Uh,
It's broken, I think, in a bad way. It's really it's sort of like it's just a roll six. If you roll,
it's
it's sort of an army that I think has so much character,
I
but
know it's a really cool army. That's why I
such a
tried to
cool
convince Baz
character.
to build it.
But the
But
army, yeah, the mechanics of the army feel so boring because ultimately you're just trying to roll a six. They also have,
yeah,
I think for me, they also have some particularly annoying units. Now, this may not be particularly, this is just, what is it, the slingshot catapult? It's the gunner catapult where you can get deadly indirect sniper. This is such a, this is such an annoying thing to play. I don't know. I just, I don't think that this version should be in the game. You shouldn't be able to
just snipe people's characters with a war machine. Like that's really
indirect
bad.
and it's deadly. It's just
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. It's so funny. It's so true. I love the army's look. I
Oh yeah, it's a cool thematic army. They've got like a an undead thing going because they have automata, which is the same as undead. And it's like rules wise anyway.
uh
They're a really cool army. They're really unique. They just really need to be reworked to not be so heavily dependent on rending
it
because
doesn't. Yeah, the reason I exactly rending it sort of makes playing them very boring because if you roll a lot of sixes, you're going to beat anybody, and
yeah,
if you don't, yeah, they're
yeah, it's a super like so it's broken if you roll well.
and
Which
that's
is
something that I think that yeah, it's just a problem. So
which is why we're putting an S in. I think the other army, well, that's in a good that we're sure for sure is an S tier. We're also will
yeah,
be
we'll talk about
similar. So we'll
yeah.
talk about that.
The next thing is dwarves. I think we can put them as a solid A tier. Correct? How you feel about that?
Definitely the slow is not nearly as debilitating as I think you might think it is. It's
No.
and the fact that they counteract that by literally their stuff is cheaper, so it's they're such a good army.
Yeah.
And they've got lots of great options. Their vehicle and monster options are good. Their artillery is good. Their shooting is good. Their infantry is just some of the best in the
Oh,
game.
it's good. Bearded veterans. So there's two particular ones. We can talk about all their infantry. One, bearded veterans with heavy spears. I mean, I think this is one of the few units that have a quality
What do you
three
do against that?
an
Like you,
AP1 counter. I mean, these bearded veterans are so good. And then the other one, now we don't want to show all their armies. Those hammerers. I mean, hammerers
hammers are just
ridiculous.
disgusting as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Like you have a front. If you have a front line of bearded veterans and a back line of hammerers, and I know this because Dan has played this many times.
yeah.
It's like, what do you even do against that? It's so hard to deal with.
Yeah. Dwarves are. Do not kid yourself. Dwarves are an A tier. Eternal Wardens. What do you think about Sam against
Eternal
them?
Wardens are also an A tier army in my
Yeah,
mind.
I think so
They,
too.
they,
They've
I think a lot of people don't maybe kind of gloss over them because they're kind of the Age of Sigmar poured over, and I think that that's kind of
a lot of fearless.
yeah,
Fearless in Age
they're
of
a lot of
Fantasy.
fearless.
Yeah, fearless in Age of Fantasy is a big deal. Remember, just morale mitigation in Age of Fantasy is better, But to have that fearless there, it means you really there. It's getting close to
They
undead,
have fearless and
right?
everything. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
it's
have
getting close
fearless
to
on.
undead, where you can just some decent depth, a lot of furious in the army.
Mhm.
They've got some really good monsters.
They probably have, in my mind,
Yeah,
the
let's
the most efficient monsters in the game,
breath
which are
attack is
the
great.
the, the Drake Eternal and Dragon Eternal.
One thing about their
The
monsters I think is really great is the quality three. You don't see a lot of
mhm.
guys that have a quality three monster.
Yeah, quality 3, def 3.
Yeah.
They're really cheap. They have breath attack, which is, again, you're just basically
Breath attack's
getting
incredible.
free wounds.
Yeah, breath attack's
Um,
incredible. Good options too. You can go
mhm.
the rending, you can go the AP3 route. Quality three on monsters is a pretty is a, on bigger guys is a big deal.
And it's a lot of their units in general also have a lot of upgrade options,
Mhm.
which is, again, is kind of a, because it's a port over from Age of Sigmar. So most of their units have multiple kind of weapon options or
And they're
whatever.
very similar.
Uh,
And this is something that we have to talk about. The context is the way armies are built. You can only bring a certain number of units. But since a lot of the Eternal Wardens have similar units,
yeah,
they
you can
sort
get
of break
around
that
that
rule.
restriction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
break that rule effectively. Good shooting. They've even got some. I mean, like I say, we can get into them. They have some Def 2. They're one of the few things that have some guys with Def 2 with their
yeah. And they have
destroyers.
characters that can get def too, and
Yeah, I mean, it's
it's
the destroy. I mean, so yeah, we could talk
mhm.
on and on about. They're a very solid army. They're a very solid army,
Yeah,
and
they're kind of similar to dwarves in a lot of. They're more expensive than dwarves, but have a lot of the same
them and dwarves
hitting
are very
power.
good. I think they have better spells and they're
Mhm.
faster, but dwarves, the slow isn't that big of a deal for dwarves,
It's not.
and especially in Age of Fantasy, where in difficult terrain. Remember, in Age of Fantasy, you are going to be rushing a lot more, which means that difficult terrain is actually just a benefit to dwarves because in difficult terrain, dwarves are just as
You're
fast as
because
everyone else.
you're going 6 inches anyway,
Yep.
right?
Yep. It's not
That's
like
where we're going.
and that's where I think people, if you have some difficult terrain, that's the dwarves love difficult terrain. They love it.
Yep.
Okay, Ghostly Undead. Sam, do you want to do the honors?
Yeah, Ghostly Undead, right there in S tier as well, and for the same kind of reason as Duchies of Vinci, is they are just not a balanced army.
No.
They
They get 3 or 4 saves. You can bring them. So Skies goes to a great example that have ethereal, and they can get spell eater. So that's 3 saves, and then you can get regen with them as well, like as an upgrade. So these guys can get 4 saves. And depth
yeah.
6, people don't realize how nasty this is. AP is so expensive, and to effectively be able to,
Have you ever that just doesn't care at all?
yeah, it's you're basically playing about 300 points up from your opponent.
Uh-huh.
And then of course they've got chilling. I mean, what a great combo. Def
They're-
6 and chilling. Just
yeah, I know. It's great. They're just so disgusting. And they've got Reap and Rending.
mhm,
Uh Reap is kind of the inverse of Rending.
yeah.
It's if for when your opponent rolls a 1 for for their saves, it counts as 2 wounds. It's again, it's like it's an army list that is very can be very swingy depending on if you roll good or your opponent rolls bad. It's like it's just so overpowering.
Ethereal as well,
Uh,
Strider. They don't care about difficult terrain
yep,
either.
don't care about
Pretty
anything.
fast as well. The other thing is that the one disadvantage is their low quality. But
Mhm.
then they've got a spell that grief, which lets you get +2 to hit the next time you charge. So it's like their spells are ridiculous, Sam. Like
Yeah,
they
and
have
they have
regeneration. They have
regeneration
a
spell
regeneration
too.
spell.
It's like
I mean,
and their some of their character options too are just like
oh, the banshees. I think
so
they
good.
have the banshees too, which I think are those are the howlers, the double
Yeah,
tapping. By the way, in Age of Fantasy, to have a double tap shooting ranged weapon is crazy, and that's a quality 3. So anyway, we could go on and on. Ghostly Undead, uh,
yeah, they're busted.
yeah,
It's I Dan played it against me once, and Reap did so much damage that he's like, I'm just never playing this again. This is
yeah. It's
it felt so
well, that
bad.
got number 1 in the I mean, we saw that again, yeah, in the Worlds Beyond. We saw that too. Thing. All right, John's Tribe. I think we can put them in F tier. I mean, you know,
They're fun flavor, but they're garbage.
yes, they are
Uh,
garbage. And same thing. I think
your
it's
opponent
just
has anything but deadly, and you just cry.
yeah, and just also being able to just big guys only don't work in the objective control game. You the fact that this big giant can be countered from basically a goblin is just that's something a further issue I think needs to be looked at. But that's the reason we have to put them in things. Goblins, I think, are D tier. I think goblins, Sam, correct me if I'm. They could be a better army, but goblins really suffer from the army list restrictions that you have to have. They cap the number of the number of units you can have in an army. And that means that goblins, the horde style that they're sort of meant to play, they can't play it because they
Yeah, like you end up having to take subpar units to kind of, it's they're probably better in regiments too, just in general,
it
where you can kind of block people out a lot more too with your horde.
and it's not that they don't. I think for me they could be a C tier army if they would loosen up some of those max unit restrictions on the army list. I think it's a little more about that because they have some decent spells. I think a
Hmm.
poison is okay. They've got a plus on the charge, plus one defense. Well, the defense is sort of bad for them, but the thing that really hurts them is you're right. They can't. They don't have a lot of caster three, and they just can't. They can't fully utilize their army because when you, I know I've built some of these armies, and we'll go the same
Yeah,
thing. Let's
they
just
don't
talk
have a
about
lot.
them and
Yeah,
halflings as well. Halflings and goblins are in the same boat, where you, because of the content, you can't really do a swarm style in this game because if you
yeah.
could really run a swarm style, they'd be better.
And
Um,
both armies, both of them also not having a level 3 caster is super detrimental.
they're elites
Uh,
too. They don't have that consistency a lot. They have some monsters, but those monsters, here's the thing: quality four monsters, Sam, are rough. They are just
it's
rough.
risky, yeah, because
It's
you
really
you
rough.
just you run the risk of, like, you charge it with, do a couple wounds, and you accidentally, like, waver it, and then it just sits there, and
Mhm.
you cry because your 300-point monster is sitting there in the corner just doing nothing.
Yeah. Habit dwarves, I think, are about a C tier. The thing is that they don't really have a lot of what dwarves have. You know, especially in the reign of they don't have a bearded veterans with the spears. The first of all, that right there, their infantry isn't great. Their shooters are okay. They're just. I think they have some interesting monsters, but those monsters aren't they have some quality four monsters. It's just not like I said, they're
Yeah, they've got
okay.
they've got some interesting things, but they're just not as good as dwarves, quite
Yeah,
honestly.
they aren't.
And
They've got
they're not
some.
as good as the other, and they really don't deserve B tier either, I
Yeah,
think.
I think they're C tier. Yeah, C tier.
Yeah, they're
They
C
just.
tier.
Yeah, they just. I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't. I think that they're definitely better than halflings, goblins, and sea elves.
Yeah,
They're just. I feel
I think
they're.
they're C tier. I don't think
Yeah,
they're.
maybe a lower C. I think the beastmen are better, but they're. I don't. I can't. They're not that bad. Havoc Warriors, are we putting them in a B tier? Is that where we're going for these
So I
guys?
think I think yeah, and we'll
I think there's some of them. It could be A, like Plague, maybe with the
so
region, could
so
be
yeah, like
Putrid.
just briefly, like, yeah, I think regular Havoc Warriors are probably B tier.
Yeah.
I think War probably gets dropped down to C just because of the lack of variety.
Mm,
Plague is probably A. Uh, Lust, or sorry, Change is probably also down to C because Stealthy
yeah.
is just not good. Because shooting is just not as good in Age of
Yeah,
Fantasy.
it's yeah.
So when you're paying for Stealthy on all your units, you're paying a tax
Hmm.
for defense against something that's already kind of not that great.
Hmm.
And Lust is either B or A. There's an argument for A, but I think Plague is probably definitely A because just
It's
the
sort of
region
there. I
is really
think you can
good.
kind of average them out to around B.
Yeah.
One, they've got some decent guys who have one thing a lot. They have a lot of good monsters, but a lot of quality
Mhm.
four monsters with no fearless. So they've got some heavy hitters and some tough
Yeah,
units.
like
But this
Drake
is
Centaurs are amazing offensively.
Yeah.
Uh,
But the thing is that quality four, all it takes is one thing to waver them. And that's they have, like I said, they don't. The other thing I think we have to talk about with them, a lot of your armies that can have tough units that can actually bring banners are better. A lot of, especially these Drake Hunters, the big problem with them is that they can't bring banners, and
Yeah, and nor
banners
can
are a
like the
big deal.
demonic guard knights either. Like it's several things like that that don't have.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, where if they could, I think they could really be better. I mean, you're looking
Mutants
at maybe
also not
Havoc
getting,
Ogres.
yeah, mutants
Havoc
don't get
Ogres are
banners.
okay, but it's still like then they're only def. Like they just don't quite have. I think if they could get some banners, they'd be better. But like I said, they're not bad. They're decent. You can do well with Havoc Warriors. I think you
Yeah,
can.
I certainly have. They've got some great. They're one of my favorite armies for sure.
High elves. Are we? So this is man. It's either an A or a B. How do you feeling about this? Because it's
I think high elves deserve A tier.
there. It's really it's hard to put high elves in the same thing as Havoc Warriors, and I think I
Mhm.
would agree with that. They've got
They've got some really good
yeah
options.
one. They've got these so one big bonus. I think they were a B until they got the buff to Lion Warriors that were bringing them with protected and fearless.
Yeah,
This is
protected
such a
fearless on Lion Warriors is very good.
yeah
That,
with banner. I mean,
they're
double
a
they're
great
double
frontline.
tapping.
They're
They
your a great frontline army, frontline unit now,
mhm.
and you can get that upgrade on all of your characters.
Yeah.
Like
Oh
you
yes, you
can
get the
get fearless
dragons,
and
the dragon, and that's the thing. You're right.
yeah,
You can get fearless
you
and
have the best
protected
dragon.
on a
Yeah,
dragon. Their
yeah, you have
spells, yeah, their
yeah,
spells are pretty good. Their level one isn't so great, but here's the thing: that with high elves, you can run the level three casters and the weapon masters. The weapon masters are super solid with the double caster upgrade. So your level one, you can generally cast much more spells with them because those weapon masters are super solid. Remember, you can put a level three or so caster with those weapon masters, and then they're coming in with like five spell tokens a turn. So you can really do a lot of. I mean, they've also got some other good ones. Some
hmm
good cav. They've got a lot of quality three on their monsters.
they're all quality. They're almost all quality three in general. Like they're just really they're very solid.
I think
Coast Guard are also
Shadow
really
Brothers
good.
too. Shadow Brothers are a great anti-stealth. Sea
Mhm.
Guard. Their Sea Guard are
Yeah,
terrific.
yeah, they're Coast Guard, but yeah,
Coast Guard.
the
That's right. Yeah,
the,
Coast Guard.
the
Fearless.
fearless with spears and bows, very very good. Uh, they've got some options that aren't as good. Like phoenixes aren't great. The but
Frost Blizzard's
the
okay.
lion chariots now are much better.
Yeah, the Frost Blizzard is pretty decent. I guess you could have to you have to, it's I don't like the Phoenix because it is a little
The
squishy.
flyover stuff in general, I think, is kind of just not.
Yeah.
You're not gonna be able to really utilize it in most games.
Mm. But still
It's
super good army. Human
mhm.
Empire, I think this army I feel is almost getting into the S tier, but it's A tier. I think
Yeah, it's
but it's
probably at the
hard.
top of A tier at the very least, but
It's the best A
it's
tier army.
very close to be.
Best A
It,
tier
it,
army, yeah. And the
it,
Elemental Titan, I don't know how Human Empire get a quality 2 Def 2 Elemental Titan. To me, this shouldn't be in here. I don't
that also has Caster 3 just
Caster
because.
3 and great spell list. I mean, you can see all three of their spells are terrific.
Mhm.
The +6 to charge, the +1 def, and they got the +1 to hit. Very good.
You got every good spell in the game.
Yeah.
You've got multiple like the different wagons which have
Wagons
buffs
and they shoot too.
are so
Those
good.
wagons are
Yeah.
so good and def 3. So you can
Uh-huh.
put them in terrain. They're not getting shot. They're def 2 in terrain. So I've played
They're
Human Empire myself. They're very good. A really good buffing army. Just a really good buffing army. Good chaff, good elites. They have fearless where it counts. Like a lot of their elite infantry has fearless, and so it's sort of a lot. It's like Chivalrous Kingdoms. Chivalrous Kingdoms are they are similar. Chivalrous Kingdoms aren't as good, but they have Peg Knights. So it's
mhm.
both of them are very good armies. And like I said, they also have Fearless on where it matters. You know, they've got their Guard Knights and their Elite Weapon Masters. So they got the Fearless too.
Yeah, and the
Fanatics as
Griff
well.
Riders also
Fanatics
fearless.
are great. Mercenaries are terrific too. Yeah, great. Kingdom of Angels. I think this is a pretty good B tier army.
I agree. It's
It's
B
it's it's
tier.
solid.
It was A tier before the nerf to like they used to just all have region,
mm,
and now it's basically region only on a 6-up.
mm.
Um,
It's still
the,
good.
it's still pretty good.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's good, and they've got some decent. Like I said, they've got some decent chaff with Fearless.
yeah,
A lot of their
what
other
keeps
stuff, yeah, a lot of their other stuff doesn't have Fearless, which is a little tough. They've got some decent, they got some decent like Burning Angels are okay, but again, they're a little pricey, and they don't have Fearless on some of their elite
and they
units.
don't have a lot of options, right? They're kind of a limited selection army, which is probably what keeps them out of A tier, is because they just don't have the same level of options as some of the A tier armies.
Yeah. Terrible level one spell. The
Yeah,
level two with the -4 to rush is okay. And
yeah,
then the
their
plus two
spells are
to hit
generally
is
not that great.
okay. Yeah.
But
That -1 to shoot is terrible. Now high elves have it, but high elves have the casting capability to just ignore it. But that
yeah,
-1 is terrible, level
the
one.
plus and the plus two to hit is not actually that great a lot of times either, because a lot of your fighty stuff is already quality 3.
Mm,
So it's like you're literally kind of wasting. You kind of wish that that was the level 2 spell and it was the +1.
yeah.
And I think if they get some minor changes, they'd be an A tier army.
I think they're not bad. Their level three isn't bad because you can run sisters or nuns are pretty good with the Furious and quality four. But yeah, they're not bad. They're a solid B tier. I think. And by the way, a B tier army, Sam, I think is pretty good.
It's a good army, and even the C and D tier armies are still, they can be good. They just take a lot more work
Mm,
to make them good, and you kind of have to play them a little bit better, and you have less options, which is a big thing. Is when you're trying to be kind of a competitive list, uh, and having a lot of different options, so you can kind of have your units that fill different roles and such, really allows you to kind of fine tune your strategies. And the really good armies, you'll see a trend here, right? Is like have a lot of different options, whether that's upgrade options or just troop options,
mm.
so that you can really focus in on what my army is trying to do and doing it really really well.
Yeah, Mummified Undead I think are at A tier. This is
Mhm.
they're probably the weakest of the undeads, but
It's
they're
still
still
undead.
solid. Yeah, they're still solid. I mean, level one poison's very good. On their spells, they've got a +2 to hit, which is actually very important for their army because they're a lot lower
Because they're
quality.
quality 5 and 4, so it's
Yeah,
it's actually you
+1
actually get the
defense is
full
great.
usefulness of
+1
them.
defense is great on them. I mean, nothing stands out. They're not ghostly undead. The thing is that just being undead in this game, Sam, is so good that
Hmm.
you don't need. And they've got some good quality threes in there. They've got some quality fives. There's nothing that I would say super stands out with their army, but they've got some really good chaff with scarab swarms and
I
ambush.
would s- I would say the snake men probably stand out. I
Yeah, I mean
think the
the scarab
snake men are
swarms
really
too.
good.
Scarab swarms depth quality six, depth six with ambush
Hmm.
is also pretty good. They're good, but I think there are some better. The other I think undead in general is such a powerful rule that
Hmm.
but yeah, they're good. They're good. Ogres. This is a C tier army, I think. Maybe
Yeah, C tier.
C tier. They're not. They just they're okay. They're that's what they're okay. They're not great. They're not a D tier army, but
Hmm.
they
They,
just sort of they do have some decent chaff with the goblins. I think that's
th
what really keeps them out of D tier is they do have some goblins there. Like you don't want to run an all tough army in this game. Like that would be bad.
no, that's it's super risky if you do that. And if you do want to run an old tough army, I think there's better options than ogres,
Yeah.
which is kind of that's just the nature of this game. Uh, they a lot of their actual ogre options, right? They just are just not as good as a lot of the other armies' large infantry options.
Yeah, I agree. Orcs are about a C tier army. They're again okay. The big thing with orcs, I think, is we talk about a lot of time, just relatively lower quality. I've played with orcs. They aren't bad, Sam. They're just sort of, like I said, some decent chaff with the hobgoblins.
Hmm.
But just a lot of quality four on their leaders. That's the thing that really hurts them, is they don't have a quality three leader, and that's rough.
That's correct. It is hard to deal. It is hard because it's like that means you can't even make one unit quality three basically. So it now they do hit real hard with fear with like frenzy and furious,
Yeah.
but they are kind of a very all in army. There, the other thing is like there's kind of only one way you build works, uh, and
I mean, they have some decent. The thing is that with quality four and very little fearless, and
mhm.
this would happen to me when I played orcs against your undead.
It was Havoc Warriors, I think is what you
Havoc
did.
Warriors, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But they're break tests. They have no real. They have a lot
Yeah.
of quality four. They
There,
can bring standards, but a lot of quality four. No fearless means that the army can just fall apart real fast. Um,
yeah, and it's one of those things like they're kind of like they run up and they hit real hard on that one turn, but if you get out of position
or if you have
and you don't.
spears, or I mean, there's
Mhm.
ways to stop that. Like they don't. A lot of the army has not. There's some things that have decent depth. There's a lot of depth four, five, and six that the spears can take out two or three of them, and then
And then you're not hitting so hard anymore.
yeah, yeah, they're okay. But I think yeah, ossified undead. I think we have to basically put all the undeads around an A tier. Am I wrong on that, Sam? Ossified, they're
I
not as
agree,
good.
except for uh maybe Shadow Stalkers might not be the
Yeah, we'll
one.
get into shadows. Yeah. But ossified, the thing is that you can. There's a lot of. I almost want to put them in B tier.
I think yeah, I think there's an actually I think
Maybe
we
we
put
will put them in
Ossified
B
at B.
tier. It's just because undead is so great, but they don't have again no quality three characters, which is rough. I mean that's rough.
Yeah.
They've
They
got some decent
they also
spells, I
don't have a
guess.
level. They don't have a level three caster
Their
either.
level three is terrible anyway. I mean, two
Uh,
units at -1 to hit. But you're right. That ossified is a double-edged sword because there's a lot of AP nothing in Age of Fantasy, so you are paying a lot of that.
yeah. So if you just have like against some matchups, it's going to be really really good, and some matchups is going to be like, okay, well my ossified is it doesn't really do anything.
It's also, let's go back to it. There are some armies that are just at a natural advantage because they have more units in the army. And the
Yeah.
fact when you have armies that have more units that do similar things, you can sort of ignore that. What is it like? Max two or three of the same unit, depending on your point level.
And,
And
and a lot of
ossified are small. They're relatively a small. I don't quite
and
know how they like. I don't get the difference between ossified and undead, or I don't know. It feels like there's too many undeads in the game, but
that's probably true. But the other problem with things like ossified is a lot of armies for their kind of anti armor tech is going to be rending, and ossified
yep,
doesn't
doesn't mean
stop
anything.
that. So it's like it's
That's right.
rending is still going to be, you know, wounding you on twos. So it's like or like when you get those sixes. So it's kind of again you're paying for a rule that's just not you're not really getting full use out of a lot of times.
There are some units that I mean, like I said, you can, but like I said, a lot of they do have some quality three units, but a lot of their stuff is quality four, and not a quality three
They've also got
character.
so few options,
Yeah, and then
right?
not having a
They
quality three character, that's a big deal. Like you need those quality three characters.
yeah.
Yeah,
The
Ratman or they're similar D tier. Goblins, halflings, and Ratman have the same problem where they are limited by the army list restrictions of a max number of units. I
mhm.
think you could
I
do
think Army,
three.
I think Ratman you might put up to C, just because they do have enough kind of vehicle and monster and artillery options that you can kind of basically play a very you have a lot of like chaff stuff and then just like shoot them with the big guns on stuff. But
Well, I think they're God Titan. I'll give you that. That's true. They do have a God Titan that is pretty crazy at quality too. We'll put them at quality. I think yeah, I agree. We'll put them at C tier purely because that God Titan is
is
very
pretty
good.
and it kind of lets them get around that
Yeah, that's a good
defect
point.
that goblins have as well, like
Yeah, that's
where
true. The
Mhm.
level two -1 to shooting is still terrible. The other ones are okay. Yeah, the God Titan alone, I think, puts them at C tier. I'll go with that. Rift Demons, are we going for around a B tier for them? Is that about
I
right?
think that
C
like
or
they
B?
probably average like kind of similar to Havoc Warriors. They average out to a B tier with some of them being
C
A and
tier.
some of them being C.
Mhm.
And probably the same, literally the same,
I
ones we
may
talked
put
about
them
in
in
Havoc
C
Warriors.
just because I would say this. Damon, that army-wide scout and ambush isn't nearly as big of a deal in Age of Fantasy, where you're going to have a lot more hand-to-hand in the game.
Yeah,
It's now in Grimdark Future, it's a bigger deal when you have a lot more shooting. But the fact that all that Rift Demons are really doing, they're just paying to be closer to an opponent in a hand-to-hand game. So for a lot of opponents, it's a strict negative. I don't know, maybe
I agree. Like you're overpaying for the
yeah,
rule,
it's a really wonky
and
rule. Yeah, I think well, like I said, you can have some that go into the B tier range, and I know like Change Rift Demons are in D tier. Like that's a terrible army. But maybe you
yeah,
push
because
them
you
into the
get
B.
stealth and you get the ambush. Like
Yeah,
you're
it's
literally
super
just
bad.
it's so non-synergistic.
Super bad. Saurians, I think they have another I don't quite understand all these quality 2 def 2 dread titans that some armies
Well,
just need
Saurians
to
are A
get.
tier for sure, though. Like
Yeah.
are
Well,
so
Predator. I mean, what do we have? Predator, and then you've got the. I mean, when you have
you
the
got the
shooting,
frog mages with quality two, def two. You can have you can have units be quality two,
I
like
don't.
for their nerve.
Yeah, I don't even think the Frog Mage is best. I mean, I personally like the Gator veterans or the Saurius veterans. I mean, they've
Yeah,
got
there's
the
a lot of
Guardians. The
options.
Guardians are super solid. The
Yeah,
Saurian Gardens quality 3. We have a
dragon
lot of Fearless
lizards
in the
are also
army.
really good. Yeah,
Fearless.
they're
They've got a Dread Titan quality 2 def 2. They've got the Predator. They've got the Primal Roar Predator combo where you can explode on blast things on fives and sixes. They
yeah.
actually have
I
you.
played
You're
that
right.
against you. That
Yeah,
was
they
really
actually
fun.
have some pretty good shooting in the army. It's
Yeah, you can do like a I ran a monster heavy shooting list
mm-hmm.
with like dragon lizards and spike lizards, and it was actually pretty good. And I think yeah, they're an ATR army, and again, partially because they have a lot of options, and you can kind of run them different ways, and you can which means that part of this is like from a strategic standpoint is okay. Let's say I sit down with an opponent that I haven't met at a tournament or whatever, and they're playing they're playing Saurians. Okay, well they could be playing Saurians in a bunch of different ways. I don't necessarily
Yeah.
know what they're going to do. Whereas some armies, like some of the kind of D and C tier armies, it's like okay, there's really only a couple of ways you can build a lot of those armies to be competitive,
Mm.
which means you're giving your opponent a kind of strategic advantage if they have kind of the knowledge, to understand, okay, like they're playing orcs. Orcs do this one thing. That means that I kind of know how to play against that. Whereas
Yeah.
armies that have more options than have like when I sit down, like I just don't, you don't necessarily know some of the tricks they're going to have, and it's gives you kind of a strategic advantage.
Yeah. Shadowstalkers, I feel, are in the B or C tier range. They've got effectively undead, which is great, but they also have a lot of stealth. Now they do have some ethereal on some of their units. They've also got a lot of stealth as well.
I
That
think
stealth
they're
is just not a great army wide rule in this game.
it's not, and I think that they
Got some
could
decent
be an
chaff,
A
some
tier
decent
army
chaff.
too, if you just kind of. I think there's like A tier builds you can do with Shadow Stalkers, but there's just not a lot of there there's a lot of non-synergistic things in their list. So it's kind
I
of
think
what
the with the undead, having the effectively the undead, it does get them in there. I think that you have to put all undead armies at least. I think in B. Well, we did put no, we put all of our undeads at least in B, and I think
B or
that's
A tier because it's very strong.
yeah.
I think they're probably B tier, but there's an argument for A tier as well because there are some very strong builds
They do have like, and they have
you
some
could
good
do.
chaff. Fang swarms are great because they have ensnare quality 6 def 6, but they have it's again.
Yeah,
You're paying for
they
that stealth on everything. It's so it sort of keeps them
and
at
they
a
don't have a level
stealth on
three
it.
caster as well, right? That's the
Yeah,
other.
and not terrific. Well, they have the -1 morale. Actually, their spells are pretty good. They're a B. I think they're B tier. Like that
They're B
stealth
tier.
keeps them out of A
But
tier.
yeah,
The stealth keeps them.
they don't have great spell options, and they don't have a level 3 caster. I think that's the main things for me.
Yeah.
Um,
All right, Sky Dwarves. I think we're putting it a C or D tier. Which one are we going for? Maybe a D tier almost. They just are such a. I don't know. I'm tempted to put them in a D tier. No quality three. First of all, how are dwarves not
I
having a quality three dwarf on there? I just don't.
I think you
That to
put them in D
me,
tier because again, they're kind of like
where is the quality
there's
three
only one
dwarf
thing
in
they do.
here? Yeah, I don't get that.
They're kind of an army where it's like
They're a
again, if you
shooting
sit down and
army
play,
in
if you
a
sit down and
hand-to-hand game. It's just
yeah,
not going to work out
yeah,
very well.
only eventually you can get away with that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So we've got Vampiric Undead. This is I think this is probably an S tier or A tier. It's either top A tier or low B tier. And I'm tempted to put them in.
Or yeah, it's tempting to do S tier. I think I'd still probably do them as A tier, but
I can't
there's a good argument for S
I
tier as
can't put
well.
them in A tier with Mummified Undead. They are strictly better than Mummified Undead. They've got zombies, and zombies are just terrific. I mean, Stitch zombies, slow undead, 80 points. They also get the Rising Dead. You can pop them up within 1 inch of anybody. I mean, these guys are just
Yeah,
super good. Two attacks too. Like even at Def Quality 5, Def 6, they got two attacks. They've got some great elites. I mean, bat horrors, werewolves.
even stitched butchers are actually really good.
Yeah, I mean, they've got
The
great.
mhm.
They've also got. I think they've got some morale mitigation with their vampire master, who has he's got the frightful gaze. Now that probably puts them in S tier for me. That frightful gaze is crazy good. To pick a unit and give it -2 for its next morale is just crazy. I'd have to put that. I don't think they're as good as Ghostly, but they are. I'd have to push them towards S tier because they are objectively better than all the other A tiers. I think.
I think that's fair. Yeah, they probably deserve. If any other army deserves it, I think it's them.
Low S tier, low S
Yeah,
tier. So,
and again, I think you can make an argument for human empires being in the same level, but it's
but I think they're
not
still
quite as
better than
good.
Human. They actually
Yeah.
have. I don't know. They're better than Human Empire. And Human Empire, by the way, super strong. Like they
Mhm.
are super strong. So, yeah. Okay. So we've got volcanic dwarves are about a C tier, right?
I think they're C. They may be B tier actually.
I think the
They've got
lack of defense is really rough on them. Like, and I don't
yeah
think they get spears. Again, spears are just such a crazy thing. Like they're really one of those things that you need to have because Cav are so powerful in the game. They're also such a small army list.
yeah
I don't think they
they
can
have some
compete
good
with the other B
options, but
tiers.
they okay that's fair. Yeah, I
They don't
agree.
compete with the other ones, but they're okay. They're not a D tier army.
Yeah,
Wood elves are a C tier
B.
army. What's it? B, C?
I think that they're B tier.
B tier is fine. Yeah, I mean
I
they're
think
not. They're the
they're
weakest of
probably
the
the
elves.
weakest. Yeah, they're the weakest of the elf armies, but they're still they still have some really good options.
Yeah.
The like the Revenant Bug Riders, you can do some really good things with that with poison.
Hmm.
You
Yeah, Reverend Bug
do
Riders are good. I mean,
they have bad
flying
spell
Malice
options,
is
which
great on them. They do have Def 5, but Malice and Regeneration, if you don't face some and the thing is, these guys are flying, and so they can fly around enough. You can probably avoid the rending, and that's your opponent's running. So the regen is super solid.
mhm.
Revenant Buff Riders, they're good. I think the trees are good. The thing is, they have army. Here's the thing: they have an army-wide Strider rule, and they've got a lot of shooting in the army. So a lot of their like thing is, you don't need that much Strider. You just don't. I think
Yeah,
you're
on
paying a
some unit
lot
like
of
you're
points.
paying for Strider on units that don't ever really get benefit from it. Especially like so if you have like a long and so imagine this like you've got a long range shooting unit that's really not going to move much in the game. You're going to kind of advance into terrain and then shoot the rest of the game. It's like
Yeah, you don't need it.
you're paying extra points for that Strider that
Yeah.
I don't really ever
A
need.
lot of their shooting weapons, they have good hand to hand. One thing I think that they have is the Deer Brothers. They actually are one of the few units that get Cav with Strider in Age of Fantasy is super powerful, and the problem with Deer Brothers, they're only Def 5, so they can get
Yeah.
hard countered by spears or just the thing is that with
Or you just get shot. You get
just get
shot
shot.
pretty
All
much
and
in the
that's why
first.
it's good to have a little bit of shooting in these armies because Deer
Mhm.
Brothers can just get like they're
And things
so
like that, right?
savage.
It's like that's kind of what you're. While Age of Fantasy is not as shooting focused as
Mhm.
Grimdark Future, right? You still kind of want it for to kind of plink off things things like those Dear Brothers and other units like Berserker type units that have low defense but hit real hard. Those things get just evaporated by shooting because if you've killed half of them by the time they get into combat, they're just a lot less effective.
It's one of those Strider is one of those rules that it's like Wood Elves could be an A tier army if you play in a tournament with a lot of difficult terrain. The problem is that in a tournament there's a lot of boards that don't have a lot of difficult terrain. That's the problem with army wide Strider. It's inextricably tied to the boards, and in tournaments specifically, Sam. Now, in fun games, I think Wood Elves are better, but in tournaments,
Mhm.
they just don't have as much terrain as an average fun game, right? And so it's one of
Or
those things
it's one of the things that it's too variable, so it's kind of
because
you
they
you
have the protector. I mean, they have like the plus two. They have the plus two defense if they're in terrain. They've got some decent units, and if they can get a terrain heavy board in a tournament, that'd be A tier. But we have to put them at B tier. Okay, Sam, I think this is really appreciated. I look at this, and one thing I would say it has a nice level of mix to it.
you can see the bell curve represented here,
Yeah,
which is
it really,
which is
and we
actually
didn't
important.
plan this out either. It's just how it worked out.
and,
Sam,
and
any
and that's good because that means you're actually getting an even that the relative balance of this game is much closer than a lot, quite honestly, a lot of other war games that I've played.
yeah, a lot of, and honestly, if you're playing a C tier army, Sam, you've played Beastmen before.
Mhm.
You can win with Beastmen. I mean, they're very
Oh,
good.
definitely, yeah.
Orcs, I've played orcs. Orcs are very good. Rift demons. I mean, these are the armies that we've played. Um, you really can play these armies well. I think S tier I would love to see some adjustments made on them. But overall, yeah, like where it is. Sam, any last words? Thank you so much, man.
No, I think we're good. I mean, this looks solid, and hopefully this provides a resource for anyone who's thinking about what armies to build next, or if they want to play OPR at all. And if your favorite army is C or D tier, don't be discouraged. It just you can still build good lists. It just takes a little bit more work. And I love deep sea elves, and I still play them from time
Well,
to time because they're so cool looking and
and,
flavorful.
and,
But
and I think if they made some adjustments on because I think that goblins and halflings could be C or B, but you have to loosen up some of those army restrictions on mass Unix. Like that's the only reason we have to put them in D tier because of that sort of context. Yeah. All right. Sam, we'll be talking soon.
all right, sounds good.